Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has largely accelerated the growth of online shopping, and so is the exposure to online threats and numerous potential risk issues that are harmful to them and their online safety. Have you been robbed online while transacting? How was your experience? How did you go about it? Talk to us on our SMS line 20146, at Tabitha Muthoni G on Twitter, and at Metropole TVKE across all our social media platforms. Now, today discussing matters online safety, cyberspace security. Joining us to help with the conversation is Alan Luala, a local resident here who is a cybersecurity consultant, and Paul Ducklin, the senior security advisor for Sophos and writer for Naked Security. Welcome to Game Changers and welcome to our studios today.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Now, I'd like us to begin with Alan, beginning right here home. Let's begin with an outlook on the cyberspace security in the country in 2021. Where do we stand?
That's a very good question. If you look at the industry since 2020, since the pandemic began, a lot has changed, though it was more or less basically what was happening, but at a very large scale. Look at the way we work. We're now moving to home, and that creates a new opportunity for attackers to be able to create different or make it easier for them to get whenever they need. And this has really accelerated the way the cybersecurity framework or landscape has become. Another thing is, again, as you said, the rise of online shopping. This has created a new avenue that attackers are using, because we are now using more of our credit cards, we're using more of our debit cards. And if you look at in December, there was a huge leak of credit card and debit card information on the internet. So that is also going to rise in 2021, considering that attackers don't sleep. They actually really do not sleep. So, Paul, let's come to you. What's your take on where we stand in the cyber space this year, 2021?
Well, the bad news is, of course, that all the things we know about cyber criminals from the past, everything they've done up to now, they're going to keep on doing. So the fact that we're in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic, the fact that many of us, for example, in the UK, you're required to work at home unless you can't. So it's away from the office, they don't have access to an IT department. All of those things are things that cyber criminals can take advantage of, and they are taking advantage of. But all the other things that they used to do, it's not like they're kind of doing all bad stuff, like going after your bank account or trying to steal your data, that they would do whether you're at work or in the office. So it's sort of like we have all the ills of the past and those problems that we have, particularly for those people who are in lockdown and maybe doing things a bit differently. And online shopping is a fantastic example of how people's lives have changed. And certainly last year, one of the huge things that we saw in the UK was the prevalence of home delivery scams. Now, people have never ordered online before. They're starting to do it. They're getting home deliveries. So suddenly they suddenly start getting text messages from the delivery company saying your delivery's on the way, your delivery's late, we couldn't get your toilet rolls or whatever it was. And so they're suddenly getting used to the idea that they need to track all these things. And guess what? The crooks have jumped in and they've decided, well, that's a fantastic way where we can send fake messages that look like the delivery company. And because everyone's worried about home deliveries, of course, they're more likely to click than they probably would have been the year before. So the problem is whenever anything happens, whether it's a political event, whether it's massive news, whether it's a natural disaster, or whether it's a global pandemic, cyber crooks are quick to jump in and use it as an excuse to trick you into clicking links that otherwise you probably wouldn't.
Great. Now, I'm understanding that Sophos have issued a 2021 report on cyber attacks, which flags how ransomware and fast-changing attacker behaviors from advanced to entry level will shape the threat landscape and IT security in 2021. Let's talk about this report. Let's talk about the analysis bit. How did you as a company come about it?
Well, over the past couple of years, particularly with ransomware, which is if you like, the elephant in the room if that's an appropriate metaphor. It's the one aspect of cybercrime that most businesses are most scared of. And for viewers who aren't familiar with ransomware, it's where criminals get into your computer or your network, they scramble all your files with an encryption key. They keep the encryption key, you don't have it, they do, and then they say, guess what, your business has come to a standstill, but we'll the key back. And unfortunately, the fees for that, if we go back 8 years when this all started, the crooks, they were going after people one at a time. They wanted an average of 3. Then a few years ago, they figured, what if we attack companies and we hold the whole company to ransom? Then we can ask for $50,000 at a time. These days, the ransoms have gone up sometimes to millions of dollars at a time. And some companies, big companies, they feel they have little choice but to pay because their businesses figuratively come off the rails. That all their computers are. The only people who can really help them if the disaster's bad enough is the very crooks who scramble that data in the first place. So we've been studying that ransomware threat for several years, and what we've done over the past, we've gone out, we've got a third party to do this for us, so it's not us asking the questions, and gone out and asked people, look, what's the situation with ransomware? And these are people across lots of countries. Sadly, in Africa, the countries we can only survey a certain number of countries. So in Africa, the countries we've surveyed include South Africa and Nigeria, not Kenya, sadly. But the truth is that wherever you look in the world, one country may be a little bit better off than another, but nobody's immune to this. So that's the problem with ransomware criminality, where crooks are freezing up your whole network, is that there are some cases where companies, even though they know they're doing a deal with the devil, they kind of have little choice but to pay up, because otherwise their business is probably going to fail. And what we've seen particularly in 2020, and we know this is going to continue, it could be the if you like, the biggest part of ransomware in 2021, is the crooks are no longer just scrambling your files and then saying, hey, buy the key to unlock them, it'll cost you $1 million. They're saying, you can buy the key. Oh, by the way, before we scrambled your files, we've been here for 3 weeks. We stole all your important files first, and here's a sign, we're telling the truth. If you don't pay, not only will we throw away the key so you can't unlock your files, we'll leak your files to the world. We'll tell the regulator, we'll tell the press, we'll put it on. Some of these crooks, they have their own websites where they name and shame companies that didn't pay ransoms by leaking data. So that's the problem we're heading into, is that the amount of money involved is absolutely enormous these days, and the crooks show no sign of letting up because they're kind of making too good.
Yeah.
That was a very positive message, I'm afraid. But, the good news is that the systems that you can use against any sort of cyber threat generally does work against ransomware. So if it takes ransomware to get you worried enough to go, let's protect the business across the board, you're probably protecting yourself against all the other threats that could come to harm you. Things that steal passwords, steal individual data files, use your network for bad stuff, to commit other crimes and so forth. So that's the sort of silver lining, if you like. If it takes ransomware to wake us up, then at least we'll all be trying harder to push back against the crooks.
Yeah, great. Okay, now Paul has mentioned something that led to freezing of network and home deliveries, where people stopped getting messages, and that's where this whole thing came to be. Now the coronavirus pandemic has seen most businesses. What Paul has said now leads us to us looking at how the coronavirus has affected businesses, especially small businesses pushing online. Now, do we feel that the world was ready for this online shift, and how exposed is the online space now as a result of the online surge?
Well, if you look at the way business was done initially, the office was in the office and the home was home. But right now, in 2020 going forth, there's becoming less of a bridge between the two, and they're becoming one. Because as you can see, Paul is working from home. Most of us are actually working from home. So your office is your house and your house is your office. And this, again, like he said, introduced a new wave It's not that it wasn't happening before, but now it became more prevalent. Take an example, targeted marketing. You'd find that there are companies who would send specific advertisements to end users. An attacker can actually take advantage of that and send you a fake advertisement as and they will masquerade as the company, asking you to click on a link so that you can check, for example, the new, let's say, if you want to buy shoes online, so you can see what new shoes have come in. So when you click on that link, that is enough to make you get attacked. And whatever information they'll get, they can get your personal information. They can use your devices for other nefarious things that you might not know of. And these links come through all kinds of manners. They can come through WhatsApp, they can come through email, they can come as an SMS, and so on and so forth. So that has really opened up the threat landscape to an even wider audience. Another thing that has happened, and again this especially in Kenya, we've seen a huge rise in radicalization and also being recruited into terrorist organizations and so on and so forth. This is because there's been a lot of time people have had on their hands, and especially the youth, they want to do something with their time. You've seen where children are getting into Al-Shabaab or many other militias, or apart from that, you're seeing people are doing this, those bashes where you go in for a party and it wasn't really a party, and then once you're in the party, people take photos, and then those photos are going to be shared. So you're asked to pay so that those photos are not shared. But also you have, you're not sure if you pay if they're going to be shared or not, because someone can just be malicious and do the same. So again, this has really opened up, let's say, a Pandora's box of lots of different modes of attack. And it's up to us to be really careful on what's happening and what's going to happen even in the new year. On the corporate side as well, you find now that I'm working from home, I am using my own laptop as opposed to the company issued laptop. And some companies aren't able to afford to give, for example, a virtual private network that connects securely to the company. So in this case, maybe my laptop might have had some infections, and I can carry this into the company. So that is also another vector where you'd find that by not knowing, I'll be able to orchestrate the attacker's job in my company when I go back with that laptop or something of the sort.
Wow. So now I feel that what needs to be done, because there are also some companies that you find that they are maybe whatever is not as strong and they still get hacked, even if it's not a personal laptop. So what way forward, or what should be done for us to avoid such kind of things?
In cybersecurity, we say you can never be 100% because look at it like physical security. Whenever you're in a building, there's a fence, and at the fence is a gate. At the gate, there's a gate man with a metal detector and a dog, but still things get stolen. So in cybersecurity, it's the same thing. You can only bolster your cybersecurity posture, which we call security in depth, where you have different layers of security at different points, and this can reduce the rate at which the attackers are able to get in. However, for those companies that are unable to, it is recommended to have the basics in check. Have a basic firewall, a firewall with next-gen capabilities that is able to detect attacks when they are happening. Also have an up-to-date antivirus on every person's machine, also on your phones and so on and so forth, because nowadays, again, people are using their phones more for official purposes than they are for their own personal things, because again, the line has become very gray. So that is something else. And then finally, as human beings, we need to just be more cybersecurity aware. When listen to the news, what's happening in the news in other countries, and whatever worst can happen to you. In cybersecurity, it's not about if it will happen, but when it will happen.
You have to be prepared. Okay, now let's talk about some of the cost-effective avenues available for smaller businesses and individuals to protect themselves and their businesses online. Paul, let's take this up with you.
obviously, I better not. I better not trot out all the products you can buy because I work for a company that sells those products. So I'll start with the human side, and I agree very much that this issue that very many people are now working at home, and so it's not just that work and life balance is kind of not quite what it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago. It is that work and life have kind of mixed. You're probably on one laptop, you're probably on one phone, you've probably got things you need to do during the day that you mix in with your work. Oh, I've got an appointment for evacuation at 3 p.m. The company is going to let you off and you make up the time later. So, as from a cybersecurity point of view, the individuals in your business, whether it's large, medium or small, their awareness is really, really important. Whatever products you've got and however much you can afford to spend on the products, the people are still your final line of defense. And there was a big trend a couple of years ago, in the cybersecurity industry. There were people who go, people will never learn. They're useless at passwords. They'll click on any link. The people are the weakest link. We'll just get technology to solve the problem. Now, obviously, I have technology to sell, so I believe that it can provide a great way of providing stopping most cyber attacks. But I'm a great believer in bringing out the best in your users. My experience, most people who work for a company and have to use a computer for that company, they want to do the right thing. They're worried about the company, they're worried about their job, and increasingly, at the same time, of course, they're worried about themselves. Because whether they get hacked individually or via the company, it's their work and their home life, their personal data and the work data at risk. So a big recommendation for any business, whether you're small, medium or large, is create some kind of internal email address, some way that people inside your organization can easily report things that they think are fishy or don't quite smell right. Because the crooks never go for one person in the company. If you've got a phishing email and you're in the company, it's, hey, you need to open this invoice, or you need to click this link, or you need to do this thing, or you need to take this online training, the company demands it. You're not going to be the only person in the company. And if somebody says something, then that could end up protecting everybody. Whereas if nobody says anything, then that gives the crooks a huge advantage. So have a way in which users can report things that are suspicious and take those reports seriously. And, don't be like IT departments were 10 or 20 years ago, where they knew everything and the users just had to do what they were told. Bring in your users to be the eyes and ears, and you could have a cybersecurity team that is effectively as big as your whole business if everyone's on side with you.
Wow. Yeah, they are on the importance of having a cybersecurity team in your office. Now, let's look at probably how the local governments can play. What role can they play in sanitizing the online space for individuals and businesses? Let's start with you, Alan.
So, in Kenya right now, we have a couple of laws and legislations with regards to cybersecurity. Some of which still are in the making because it's a field that keeps on changing. However, this is a collaboration between government and also non-governmental organizations. So for example, in Kenya, we have the Kenya Cyber Incident Response Team. So the KESAT is in charge of any cyber incidences in the different industries. So at that level, we have people from the different industries, that is government, we have finance, we have critical infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So in this case, for the small businesses, again, the major thing is awareness, because small businesses don't really look at cybersecurity as even a priority. Yet attackers can use those small businesses to go for the big boys. So let me give an example. Today you'll be going into a cyber, maybe to print a form. You will use your flash disk. But as soon as you plug your flash disk in, and maybe that cyber cafe has no security in place, you will come back with the same flash disk and plug it into the company. That is enough, again, to get the company infected. So look at the larger picture, in that security starts with you as a person. And once someone has that personal conviction, then they carry it forward to everywhere else they go. So in the cybersecurity world, we are called very paranoid beings because we are paranoid about everything. So whenever someone sends me maybe a link on WhatsApp, I really have to find out what this link is all about before I click the link. Or if someone sends me a document on Telegram, I have to really find out what is behind this Telegram. Because it's as simple as an Excel document. I can send you an Excel document with a macros. That is enough to have you infected. And like you said, most small businesses, again, they have no idea or little or no idea about cybersecurity. Another thing is maybe I'd say our human nature, we are all driven by greed. So we want to make the most money and using the least amount of investment. So that's where now the attackers will pry. And one thing you will notice with attackers is that they really do their research before they do the attack. So they will have a lot of information about you before they do the attack.
They are always a step ahead.
Yes.
Because I understand, or I feel attackers are somewhat, sorry, no offense, IT people. These are people who have probably in the course of their line of work have lost jobs. They're very good at what they do. And they know a certain company is doing this. So they have to learn and they're a step ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So I feel, or rather, I'd like to get this from you. What do you feel can be done? These are people, you know, you're making something, but there's someone somewhere who is a step ahead of you. But what can you do as a company, as a cyber security, you know, consultant, analyst? What do you feel can be done for people not to have, you know, all of these things, for you to be a step ahead of your attacker? Yes, let's put it this way, for you to be a step ahead of your attacker.
One of the easiest things, and if you look at most security frameworks, they advocate for three things: the people, the processes, and the tools. So if you have a good amalgamation of all these three, it makes you be more prepared for an attack than when you have maybe a breakdown in all of this. You can have the right tools, but not have the right processes. You can have the right tools, but not have the right people, and so on and so forth. So a good combination of those three would really help you bolster and actually, for example, if you get maybe something from your cybersecurity team, take it as very serious, because we've noticed, again, especially in this market, we are a very reactive market. The African Kenyan market is very reactive. You wait for an attack to happen, then you start sanitizing. However, that is the wrong approach to take, because even when you go with the old adage, prevention is better than cure. You'd rather have the cybersecurity measures in place before it happens, because if something happens, you'll be able to detect, one, in time, two, you'll be able to take a shorter time to remediate, and then three, you'll be even better prepared for the other attacks. But in case you don't have anything, then one, you'll hardly be hit, then you'll be hit hardly. Second thing is that for you to remediate will cost you a lot more, and then you'll still buy the same cybersecurity solutions and basically put in place the three things I talked about after you've already been hit. So you look at it also like reputation. If today, if Metropole was hit by a cybersecurity attack, then we all know about it. Your reputation will go down. That means many people won't want to associate with you. And in cybersecurity, you talk about your reputation as your currency. This is what you give your audience. So you want it to always be good. So again, the three things is people, processes, and tools.
Okay, Paul, coming over to you on what role probably the local governments can do. You've heard what the Kenyan government probably can do. Now let's talk about UK.
I think one of the problems that we've had for years and years and years in cybersecurity is that, you know, people like being on the internet. They like the freedom it gives them. They like the fact that they can talk to whomever they like, and they like the fact that they can express opinions that, you know, they would otherwise. So on the one hand, lots of people go, well, we kind of don't want the government getting too involved because become censorship and it'll just become control and it'll spoil the fun and the internet will be no use and anyway it won't work. But then on the other side, you get people going, oh, I got attacked. My credit card got defrauded. The crooks came into my network and they stole my tax returns. It's all terrible. The government must do something about it. And, you know, the problem is that governments kind of have to I think that what we've just heard is fantastic advice. It's not, the government doesn't have a magic wand that it can go, we'll pass all these laws and then the internet will become secure. Because the messages that the crooks send you that are trying to defraud you, in some cases, they're not just similar to the ones that you get from legitimate companies doing the right thing. They're copied and pasted, and just a link, just a phone number, just some tiny detail is changed. So what we really need is, obviously, you need a stick so that you can do something about people who do get caught involving themselves in cyber criminality. And the good news is that all around the world, in the developed world and in developing economies, it seems like law enforcement and the courts are getting better at identifying cyber crooks, despite all the difficulties of the fact that they could be anywhere in the world. Jurisdictional problems are quite tough. And courts all over the world, they're getting better at understanding that, it's not just hacking, it's not just, this is all about huge amounts of money. So I think that governments and law enforcement generally around the world, they do have successes. It's just that lots of cyber crooks seem to get away with it, and people maybe don't give enough credit where credit is due. And the flip side of that is we do all need to play our part. And I think the most important, maybe the worst advice I can give you is to assume that, no one's interested in little old me. And lots of individuals and lots of small businesses feel like that about cybercrime. You know that when you go out, when you drive, there are certain precautions you have to take. Some roads are safe to drive on, some aren't, but you probably put your safety belt on every time. And you have to learn to behave like that online. And I think there's still people who are going, look, the crooks, they're after these big businesses, they're after these $1 million ransoms. I've got $120, no one will be interested in me. And the problem is that, there are crooks who are interested in you, because there are crooks who will quite happily take $120 as easily as they'll take $120,000. And B, you, that person with just $120 in your pocket or in your bank account or whatever, you could be the way into something bigger. So it's kind of as though in cybersecurity, this may sound like a little bit of a cliche, but a lot of cliches become cliches because they're true. The problem with cybercrime, particularly for businesses, small, medium, and large, is that an injury to one really is an injury to all. Because we sort of have to keep the crooks out from our entire business. But if they can get into one person who makes a tiny little mistake, a well-meaning mistake, perhaps, you've got to open this invoice, it's overdue, you must open it, you must do this. And so maybe the advice that the US government, the US public service has been giving for years, 3 simple words that I really like when it comes to doing anything. The advice is kind of not to be in a hurry. And the 3 words to remember, I sit on my hands, and say to myself, stop, think, connect.
Wow.
And if sometimes you just take a little bit of time, you will all this link that seems perfectly reasonable. Usually, often, the crooks do make at least one blunder. And if you can catch them out, make them pay for it. So don't be in a hurry. Back yourself if you think something is fraudulent. And never assume that you are unimportant. Because unfortunately, as we've seen in 2020 with crooks stealing ransomware from hospitals large and small, those guys don't care whether you've got $10 or $10 trillion to your name. They will take it if they can, and what they get out of you could be the key to hurting someone else.
Okay, great. So as we finalize on this, probably your take on new trends in 2021, and probably what we can do to mitigate potential future risks as the hackers, keep getting better at what they do.
Well, the good news is I think we're getting better at defending. For example, at Sophos, we now have a team called Sophos Managed Threat Response and Sophos Rapid Response. Now, a few years ago, we didn't need those. We will sell you software, firewalls, antivirus, endpoint software, mobile phone protection, encryption technology, all of that stuff to protect your network. But I think what's really changed is 5 years ago, even for a small, medium, or large business, if you had say an antivirus program and crooks sent in a virus and it nearly got in and then it ran on the computer and you detected it and removed it, you go, great, one down, bring on the next one. And so what you would do at the end of every month, you'd have a little meeting in the IT department. Hey, we had 73 virus attacks this month and we detected them and we removed them, we're good. The problem these days, which we've particularly seen in 2019 and 2020, is the jargon term is human-led attacks. So what you might call, sorry to use this word, the smarter crooks are doing, is they're not just taking some malicious, like some dodgy document and spamming it out to 10 million people and hoping that 1,000 of them click. What they're doing is they're taking their time by some means to break into your network, move around, and kind of appoint themselves IT managers in their own right. So they'll move.
Yeah.
See what defenses you've got and what defenses you haven't. So the big news these days is that if you see something happening on your computer or inside your network, it means that's kind of the beginning of, probably the beginning of your investigation rather than the end of the incident. Because crooks, they're not just after get in, do something, get out. They're after get in, move around, steal all your data, take what they can, maybe encrypt all your data at the end. So I think we need to change our response, that it's not just enough to go, oh, I nearly had an accident, but I didn't. I nearly had, when you're driving, what you need to do is think, wow, something bad happened. Maybe I need to re-examine my whole attitude, the safety of my car, everything. And we need more of that in cybersecurity. It's not just incident, block, done, next. You need to think holistically. And indeed, prevention is better than cure. There's, you know that from when you're at school. There's no point in revising for yesterday's exam today. It's too late. So the earlier you think about these things, the earlier you think about how you would respond, the more likely you are to be able to deal with the sort of the when rather than the if of the crooks getting you in their sights.
Okay, great. So Alan, your take.
I think the easiest thing, and I think Mr. Dacklin brought it easy, is to be more proactive. What do I mean is that always anticipate an attack or anticipate something before it happens, as opposed to waiting for it to happen, because by anticipating you'll even be more prepared. That's why, again, if I go back to the analogy of the physical security, that's why you have a watchman, because you anticipate that there's definitely going to be a thief. So for you to deter as many thieves as possible is to have someone there to protect that from happening. Have the right measures in place in case something happens, so that in case there's an incident, you have the right incident response team and the right incident response methodologies and so on and so forth. And then finally, awareness. Make sure that everybody in the organization, everybody at home is more aware on the kind of things that are might happen, so that when you see something going wrong, then, like you said, it's easier for you to say it early in advance than when it has already happened.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. There you have it. Never assume, and when you detect something is happening, report on time. So Mr. Alan Lwala, cybersecurity consultant, and Mr. Paul Dacklin, senior security advisor, Sophos, and also a writer with Naked Security. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Great, yeah, so that's it for today's Game Changers, and until next time, be a game changer. And you can follow the conversation online on our SMS line 20146 and online at Twitter at Tabitha Muthoniji and at Metropole TVKE across all our social media platforms. And until next time, as I have said, be a game changer.